We're here continuing in the Song of Songs, the Song of Love, and two are becoming one. A little maiden who worked in the vineyards has been attracted by the king. Now she has passed through a journey, and now she is becoming like him. He finds his delight in her, and throughout the song we've been seeing how she becomes his pleasure. And this is the song that we're writing. As we received Christ, we walk in him, we grow in him, we love him, we pursue him, and he grows in us until when you see us, you see him. One day, John says, he will appear and we will see him. And when we see him, we will be like him. But now is the time of sanctification, renewing, and being transformed into his image where he's being formed in us. We're starting a new section in the Song of Songs, and it's chapter 5, verse 2. And let me read the verse. It goes, I sleep, but my heart wakes. It is the voice of my beloved that knocks, saying, open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled, for my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. This is a new section, and in this section I have a lot of questions. And maybe the reason I have questions is because I've not entered in my experience in writing this song. So it raises questions in me. Since it's a new sections, a lot of questions need to be answered regarding the situation of this part of the song and the experience of this song. What is the actual situation in chapter 5, verse 2? What is happening to her? We often pick verses from the Bible and we just enjoy them, but we don't look so much at the context of the word or how it's developed to get to that point. So in the progress of the song of this song of love, am I in the reality of this verse, of the song that I am writing? Either I'm not there or I'm there. If I'm not there, I just need to enjoy the truth of the word, the revelation of the word, and declare it and pray it until I can enter into the reality of this verse. Or if I'm there already, it becomes an encouragement. It becomes a guide. It becomes the way the Lord, the beloved Christ, can help me to enter into a more intimate union and deeper fellowship with him. Between verses 1 and 2, is there a time gap? Some say the song could have ended in chapter 5, verse 1, because it's such a high peak. But here we have the bride speaking again, and after such a rich exhibition of fullness and overflow of the experience of Christ that she had in chapter up to chapter 5, verse 1, we transition into a new section with a new experience of union and fellowship. It's a new revelation of the beloved, and it's a new revelation of his desire, a new revelation of his heart. And not only that, it should be a new revelation or condition of her heart, of our heart. We never remain the same with our beloved because he's so rich. He's always challenging us to go further with him, to see more of him and enter further into union with his life and his love. As we've gone through the song, there's been a revelation of Christ, and to speak of every aspect of the revelation of Christ would be just, it would take a long time. But just a few is he's the king. And this king is taking possession of the throne of her heart. And she's fully surrendered to him that he could work upon her. And then in obedience to him, she gives herself back to him. In the Song of Songs, he's the risen one. He's leaping and skipping over every hindrance and inviting her to abide in the cleft of the rock, that she can live in the new creation and resurrection with him and abide in his crucified life. He's the lover of her soul. The depths of his love has reached into her soul, and she calls him the one whom my soul loves, and she corresponds to him in love. There's such a match. When we come to chapter 4, verse 16, she is a garden. And in chapter 5, verse 1, this garden becomes his. But in chapter 5, verse 2, there's another feature, another revelation of Christ. And this would be the revelation of Christ as the man of sorrows. And now is she willing to follow him in the path of rejection with sufferings and be conformed to the likeness of the crucified Lamb of God? After the prayer that she uttered in chapter 4, verse 16, he answered very quickly in chapter 5, verse 1. She prayed, "Come into my garden." And then right away he says, "I have come into my garden." Now in this verse, it says that she sleeps. Now she sleeps. What kind of sleep is this? Is this is she satisfied and then become complacent? In chapter 3, verse 1, it says, this is when she was complacent. She says, "I sought him on my bed." Her seeking began to be a seeking in her way with her comfort. But here she says, "I sleep, but my heart wakes." What kind of sleep is this? Is it a dream? I said there'd be a lot of questions, and so I'm just going to keep throwing questions out. Is it a dream of him? She sleeps, but her heart is awake? Or does it denote her being closed to all but him? She sleeps to the world, she sleeps to every person, everyone, but she's awake to him. Or does this sleep expose her being dull and sluggish to follow him? Is this sleep an insensibility or an unwillingness to receive a new revelation or a further experience that he desires that she would match him more in such a bridal feature and beauty? Is her affections beginning to slumber? I sleep, but my heart wakes. Sleep here could mean she's died with Christ. How is she sleeping? She's dead to the world. She's dead to sin. She's dead to other loves. In Romans 6 it says, "I've died to sin, but I'm alive to God." In Galatians 6, Paul says, "I'm dead to the world, and the world is dead to me." In Galatians 2, it says that I have been crucified. I sleep, but it is no longer I, but Christ who lives in me. On one hand, I'm crucified. On the other hand, Christ is living in me. I sleep, but my heart wakes. In Judges 16, verse 19, Samson was put to sleep, or lulled to sleep by Delilah. And it was during this sleep he was caught off guard, and he lost his power with God. In Matthew 13, verse 25 is a really interesting verse that says, while the men were sleeping, the enemy sowed thorns or different things into the garden of the beloved. While we sleep, if we sleep in a careless way before the Lord, is this what she's doing here? She says, "I sleep, but my heart wakes." Is she sleeping the sleep of Samson? Is she sleeping in the way that the men slept, and the thorns, the enemy would come in and sow thorns? And that would curse or hinder the growth of life. In Deuteronomy 4:25, it implies that sleep is to lose freshness, and to sleep is to become old. Is her sleeping here a loss of conscious communion with her beloved? Is her sleeping a loss of his shining? Is her sleeping a loss of his speaking? No progress, no glory? I sleep, but my heart wakes. There was a similar situation with the apostles. You remember, Jesus had the supper with the apostles, and they ate together, and he shared about the new covenant, and he said he would drink with them again the wine in his kingdom. And then they went out to the garden, and Jesus took with him 3 of his disciples, and what happened? They fell asleep. Jesus labored in such an agonizing prayer to do the Father's will, but yet the disciples were sleeping. They were overcome. So in this verse where it says, I sleep, does this mean that she has taken a back step, or is she not in union with him to do the Father's will? In Matthew 25, verse 6, it says that the virgins slept, yet they were awakened by the bridegroom's coming. Is this a line in our song? Are we sleeping, but our heart is awake? In what respect am I sleeping? Am I sleeping because I'm not one with my beloved? Or am I sleeping to be dead to the world? Only each one of us can answer this question, where we're at before the Lord. And as we get to this section of the Song of Songs, I just have the feeling that there's little verses of this song written in my life. Maybe the beginning part of the song I can relate to, I can share experiences, I could share revelation. But as we move on into this song is like it says in Matthew, the way is narrow. There's become a narrow experience of the real seekers and lovers of Christ to match him in this song. I sleep, but my heart wakes. Outwardly, there's an expression of rest. She's ceased from activity, but yet inwardly she's alive and active. This twofold condition is in her experience. And then now, is this a restless sleep while she's awake? She is alive. She's conscious of him. She's occupied with him. And her thoughts are awakened to him. She says, I sleep, but my heart wakes. If you go back all the way to chapter 1, verse 5, there's a similar kind of thought. Here she says, I sleep, but my heart wakes. In chapter 1, verse 5, she says, I am black, but comely. And in that verse, we got to see the dual status that we all have before the Lord, which is an amazing revelation. And that there's 2 principles of conduct. It's either we live by the black life, or we live by the comely life. Are we sleeping, or are we awake? In Matthew 26, verses 40 through 43, in the situation we just described of the apostles sleeping while the Lord was, as a man before the Father, wanting to do the Father's will and drink the cup that he made for him to drink. When Jesus approached the apostles, the lovers of Christ, and he saw them sleeping, he made this statement. Was it an exhortation, or was it a comfort? But he says, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I sleep, but my heart wakes. I am black, but comely. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I sleep, but my heart wakes. She says her heart wakes. What's the heart? It's the innermost feelings, the innermost thoughts and longings, the innermost feelings that have spiritual aspirations. And the word heart has been used twice before in the Song of Songs, in chapter 3, verse 11, and in chapter 4, verse 9. But these two mentions are concerning his heart, the heart of the beloved, who was touched by the wonderful display of the bride and all the riches she's been absorbing and taking in of him, that now she can display for his satisfaction. His heart was excited, his heart was aroused, his heart was active, and his eyes were open to see her beauty. So here, her heart being waked or awakened indicates there's a spirit's operation within her, and it indicates the beloved's presence. I sleep, but my heart wakes. Read Galatians 2:20 over and over again if you get a chance. It says, I am crucified with Christ. This is the sleep. But I live, Christ lives in me. This is to be awake. There's a stirring within her regarding the lovely bridegroom. She is both asleep and she's awake. But yet, in this verse, he is outside, knocking and calling, open to me, open to him. So it's a new challenge to follow him. As we enter this new section, the Lord is calling us. He's challenging us. He wants us to be where he is, so he says, open to me. He knocks. Even in such a mature state, which has been described of her in chapter 4, with all the many riches of her love and her life, she still needed a further pursuit in union and fellowship with her bridegroom to match him for his pleasure and his glory. In chapter 4, there was many details of the beauty of the bride, and this was seen in the eyes of Christ, the eyes of her bridegroom. It wasn't just a human view, but it was seen by her beloved Christ and acknowledged and appreciated by him. But now in chapter 5, it's not the beauty of the bride, but it's the trials of the bride, as she's called to open to him and see him and follow him as the man of sorrows, because his head is filled with dew and his locks with the drops of the night. He's the one in the night, the one in the dark night of suffering, and he's displaying rejection and shame. As we grow, are we ready to pursue him in this way? In rejection and shame? We need to sleep to the world and not sleep to him. We need to be awake to him and not to the world. Lord Jesus, as we consider this next section, I pray we would be available, we'd be ready to open to you, to hear your knock, and to be one with you as the man of sorrows, that you can gain us fully to become your bride.